Hi, Nicholas.
Okay. All right. And also, please make sure you notice where the egg is as well. So I believe Ashley has put it in the PPT, so or somewhere. So
be listening.
okay, yes, listening. Yeah, yes. Okay, it's 2. So everyone, welcome to our session here. I just want to introduce you to Ashley Ford, and she is the film festival chair for this conference, and she's joining from Nagoya, Japan. And she's excited to be here with you guys. So I will. The floor is yours, Ashley. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for coming today and joining this session. I know there's so many wonderful things to see. I really hope that I can offer something from my own experience to you today as well. And you know, I've been thinking a lot because I'm not living in Korea, and I'm over here in Japan, and I haven't met a lot of you yet. So, you know, what's the best way to introduce myself and kind of how I got started doing all this filmmaking stuff, and I thought that the best way to introduce myself was to kind of show you and make a movie, but I didn't have quite enough time to make a movie, and but I did start writing a screenplay, and so I thought I'd take a minute just to introduce myself through a few scenes from this screenplay and kind of show you how I got started a little bit. But it's a little unusual because I'm going to ask for a little bit of participation, if possible. Has anyone ever done some acting before? No? Anybody want to try a little? Oh, okay, good. Okay. All right. Well, I have just a few parts to play, and we're going to do just a little read through this screenplay. All right, let me start sharing the screen. Okay, it's fine. All right, great. Okay, so this is Act 1, Scene 1. Okay, and for this scene, I'm going to need 2 volunteers. Anyone? One to play Ashley, or one to play my sister, Lori. Sorry, one more time, any volunteers? Oh, okay. Let's start with Rhea. Can you play me? And then Mark, would you play my sister, Lori?
I don't know if I can fill your shoes, but I'll give it a shot.
It's okay. It's just an informal read through. Okay. So Rhea, you'll play me, and then Mark, if you could play my elder sister, Lori.
Okay.
All right, and I'll narrate the first time. Okay, so this is Act 1, Scene 1, Obsession. We're inside the living room in Youngstown, Ohio. This is approximately 1989, and it's in the afternoon. Ashley, 4 years old, is leaning eagerly over the arm of a sofa, riveted by the television. On the TV, Ariel is singing Part of Your World to Eric. Ashley?
A world.
Can you see the lamps? Watch and you'll see. Someday I'll be.
Is there more?
Oh, sorry. Can you see the line?
I just see world.
Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. It's not showing the whole.
I jumped ahead a line. Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay.
Watch and you'll see. Someday I'll be part of your.
Ashley mimics Ariel by hoisting herself up against the arm of the sofa. Just as waves splash up behind Ariel.
I'm having a dyslexic day. Okay.
No, that was wonderful. That was a wonderful performance. All right, let's continue. Lori, Ashley's teenage sister, enters, looks at Ashley, and crosses the room to the VCR player. Lori?
Don't you want to watch something else for a change? How about this?
She holds up a VCR box of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, followed by
Oh, Little Mermaid, no!
Lori exasperates and falls into the sofa. So this was this was a scene that I don't really remember, but my sister strongly remembers and tells this story all the time, of how I was totally obsessed with The Little Mermaid at 4 years old, and it drove her crazy. Right, and what I think this was really the first kind of connection that I had with film and movies, and part of the beginning of a little bit of an obsession on my part. But more than obsession, I think it's a passion for movies that has really kind of played a big role in why I'm doing and so involved in filmmaking and these activities today. So thank you for our wonderful actors. And I just wanted to share with you this little scene from my life. All right, I'm gonna skip ahead to one more really important scene. Scene 3, the inciting incident. And for this scene, I'm going to need 4, maybe 5 parts. So Professor, any volunteers? You can just raise your hand. Okay, Neo, why don't you be the professor?
Yes, Neo.
Okay, and then Rose. Lisa, I saw you had your hand up. Can you be Rose? Okay, thank you. And Ryan, can somebody be Ryan? And read Ryan's part. Nicholas, okay, great. Thank you, Nicholas. You'll be Ryan. And then Ashley. Mark, do you want to try again? Okay, awesome.
Okay.
All right, Mark, you'll be Ashley. And if anybody else wants to join, we could have a narrator. Anybody want to be a narrator? All right, that's fine.
I'll do the narrator if you want.
Okay, go ahead, Rhea.
Okay, so let me just look more carefully here. Do you want me to read the scene?
Yes, please.
Scene 3, an inciting incident. Cut to text, 2008. Computer lab basement of Gordie Hall, Ohio University, Athens, Ohio. Morning.
We explored a lot of ways teachers can create audio and video for their classes. Now, for your final project, you will create your own instructional videos. Go ahead and get together and start brainstorming some ideas.
The students break off into groups, and Ashley and her group members look at each other, puzzled.
Oh, guys, what do you want to do?
We could do some fun little dialogue skits to go along with a textbook unit.
I'd rather do something informative, like a visiting guide for international students, or maybe introducing something local.
Ooh, I like that. What if we made it like a documentary, like about Donkey Coffee or another local shop? Since I work there, it'd be easy to get some cool shots of coffee and interview the owners.
Yeah, I'll take any excuse to go to Donkey.
You guys are amazing. Right? I wanna hire Mark to play me because I think he's got my role down perfectly. Thank you so much. Yeah. All right. So for me, this scene really started everything. You know, it was the first time, thanks to this course in school and this professor that I had, where I was asked to make a film, or I was asked to make a video. And the experience, we ended up doing a documentary about the local coffee shop. And it was a lot harder than I expected. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but it was really an amazing process. And afterward, you know, we interviewed the owners of this shop, and they expressed a lot of appreciation for making this film, and they put it up on their website for a while, and kind of spread their message. And I realized the kind of power of film and how good the experience of making a film was for me, and the process of interviewing the owners and putting together the script and editing it to create a message for everyone was wonderful. And it got me thinking that, what if we did this with students? And it's something that I really wanted to try because I thought every student needs to have this kind of experience that I was so fortunate to have back at Ohio University. Right? And so this is kind of how I got started with filmmaking projects a while ago. Oops, I'm gonna stop sharing here and move over to my other presentation now. Thank you so much for my volunteers. You guys were so amazing. And kind of get into the nuts and bolts of what I'm going to be sharing with you today. All right, sharing my screen. This time we'll go with Google Chrome. Okay. All right, excellent. And so today, kind of the goal of my presentation of this talk, the matrix of filmmaking. I think there's been a lot of talk and publicity about the matrix, even for this conference, you know, and with the new film coming out in December, I'm really excited about. And it gave me a really good chance to go back and kind of rewatch all of the Matrix movies. What, it's been almost 20 years, is that right? Well, that's scary. But yes, so I went back and I rewatched all of them. And as I was watching, of course, I was thinking about this, this filmmaking festival and thinking about my own professional experiences teaching. And I've been doing filmmaking with students now for over 10 years and realized at this point in my professional career that these projects are a very different point now than when I first started doing them over 10 years ago. And kind of like Neo, I went through a series of changes and developments in this project. And I think that's something that all teachers do when we kind of start out with an idea and we try to make it work as best as possible in our teaching contexts. So this is kind of a story of a filmmaking project, but it's also my story, you know, one of a teacher who's very passionate about filmmaking with English language students. And, you know, if you listen and you're also passionate about filmmaking, I think it's probably similar to your story. But if you're just starting out with filmmaking too, or you want to try filmmaking projects, I think this could also be your story. And so today I'm just going to do a kind of summary and kind of quickly reflect back on my whole experience and share just a little bit of what I've learned over the years and how the filmmaking project has become what it is today, and maybe where I see it going in the future. Right, so this is the outline of my presentation. It's a kind of journey, and I've organized it by the situations that I faced over the years in very loose matrix metaphors. So you'll be able to identify the matrix is not the Easter egg, by the way, but there are some loose metaphors here and there that I've tried to kind of connect to my story, and I'm going to hopefully focus on, I'm going to try really hard to focus on this framework, right, that I've used and developed over the years, and kind of think about how these factors like institution, technology, and students have really greatly affected how the project has changed and developed over time. Right. All right, so we have first chapter, chapter 1, and it starts back in 2010 when I had an idea that I wanted to do filmmaking with students. But at the beginning, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. And back in 2010, I was a new teacher and I was really, you know, excited and ambitious, and you have a lot of expectations, but really quickly you get a hard dose of truth or a hard dose of reality, right? So So I'll start in this chapter, the red pill. And I had just graduated and started a job at Chubu University here in Nagoya, Japan. And Chubu, just to give you a little background, is a private school. They're focused on science, engineering, and technology. And I was teaching in an elective English program. So none of the courses were required for credit. But generally we had students who were really highly motivated. But it was a mixed bag. We had different departments, different levels, different years. And even I had some faculty who sometimes took courses, and they were mostly skills-based. So English, reading, writing, listening, speaking. But there was one course that I could teach that was content-based, and I could design my own syllabus. And this was kind of my red pill, right? This is when I thought, this is the perfect opportunity for sharing my passion for film and trying out a filmmaking project with English students. And so down the rabbit hole I went. Right? And I think if you've done these projects before, you realize at the beginning you have really high expectations, right? A lot of them. And for me, oh boy, it was blissful ignorance. My course was going to be intro to film, and in Japan, our standard schedule is 15 weeks, and we meet once a week for 90 minutes, and that's 15 times a semester. And so I thought, plenty of time, right, to make a movie. And, it was a content course. So according to my first syllabus, we were going to do some film history, and we were going to learn, film analysis too. And then we'd talk a little bit about the filmmaking process, and their final project was going to be making a short film of their own. And I had a small budget for some resources. So I got some Sony Handycams and some large tripods. And as far as editing goes for this film, the students were required to have laptops, and they were primarily Windows. So we were going to use Windows Live Movie Maker. I don't think they make it anymore, but that was kind of how this project started. And the course was pretty popular at the beginning, right? And it was 24 students, and they were high beginner to intermediate level. All right, but however, when I got to the classroom and the students started working on the filmmaking project, I really woke up to reality. Right? And it became quickly clear, welcome to the real world. Japanese students were not comfortable with technology, despite my image. I think it was a little bit of culture shock too, but they didn't expect didn't know how to use the cameras. They didn't expect to bring their computers to school. And another thing was they didn't really expect to communicate outside of class to work on the group project. And that was something that was kind of shocking for me. I think in Japan, a lot of my students have part-time jobs after school or on the weekends, and most of students commute. And at this time, there wasn't a lot of SNS use for schoolwork. Right? And so there was a really big lack of communication with students outside of class. And that led to really struggling to complete the film on time. In fact, some of the students could not finish the films and ended up dropping the course or failing the course. And the major issue for me was the lack of language output and the evidence of the language learning or the language use that I had. We did storyboards and we wrote scripts, and they started them, but they ran out of time and didn't finish them. And most of the films in the end that they turned in ended up being silent. Right? And it could be my fault because I showed a lot of examples that some were silent. But I asked myself after I did this project was how much language did they actually use, and what language did they actually learn or produce through this project? And that was a really big problem. And, you know, it seems like a complete failure, but it wasn't, because they did produce some really creative things. And we did a lot of other things in the class. However, like Neo, no one ever made the first jump. But now I knew the reality, and I could start to find a way to make this project work better. Right, so I developed this kind of basic framework that guided me as a new teacher, and also the students. And one of the things I really wanted to do with this was to make it as authentic as possible. So I used kind of the real world framework of development, pre-production, production, post-production, and distribution, because that's what a lot of the filmmakers use, even in Hollywood. So it's an authentic framework, but then I took on a content and task-based approach. And I wanted to more closely connect the content of the course to the tasks that they were actually working on in the film. So when we were working on the storyboard, we'd also learn about cinematography. Right? And this led to, there was also a greater focus on the filmmaking process itself, so that I could get students to pay attention to language and use language and make connections between the content, language, and the tasks. And then I added more time. So this project took place little by little over the entire course now. And the tasks and the content are more parallel. So this basic framework made the project a lot more successful and helped me as a teacher kind of plan out the lessons and plan out the project and the course. And then the students appreciated this as well, because the goals and expectations were much more clear, and they could produce more language, and they had enough time to finish the projects. So that leads us back to the next part. After a hard dose of reality, I felt really good about doing filmmaking, and it seemed to be working really well. But, you know, just when you start to get comfortable and you think you've got it all figured out, and here's Easter egg number 7 alert, things get turned inside out. And I think we all have the experience and pain of limited contracts at our jobs. And, you know, maybe you can only stay for 3 to 5 years, and then you have to move on. And that's exactly what happened. I needed to find a new job. So I began a new chapter of adaptations, right? And I wondered, will I still be able to do this filmmaking project with my students at a new school? And how, or what would it be like? So when I went to my new school, a new environment, it's not going to be the same. And I felt like Neo, you know, kind of bending over backwards and dodging bullets. And at every step, there was another roadblock I needed to overcome. And Nanzan Junior College was also in Nagoya, Japan. But there were a lot of differences. So I couldn't just easily plug in to this new school and keep the project the same way it was. The curriculum was totally different. We had skills classes, and as a contact teacher, I couldn't teach any electives. So I had writing, discussion, and the only course I thought maybe I could do a filmmaking project in was interaction, which is kind of a communications course. But that was we had a set syllabus and a textbook that we needed to use. So there wasn't, you know, I thought, do I have enough time to do this project? And then at Nanzan University, there was also no technical resources. I didn't have any cameras there, and the students they weren't required to have computers. And we had a computer lab, but we weren't allowed to install any software onto it. So I felt like I had nothing. But there was some good. The light, it was probably the students. They were really motivated and really interested in studying English, and they wanted to make a movie. And here, there was also a great culture of kind of group work. They worked really well in teams. They were all girls, and it was an all-girls school, and they had a really strong rapport. So I thought, oh, I think they would really excel at doing this kind of project. So I discussed it with them, and we made an agreement. We'd spend 60 minutes of the class doing our regular coursework, and then the last 30 minutes of class, we would work on this film project. But due to the lack of time, I kind of had to focus, and we just focused on writing the storyboard and the script. So kind of a close-up here of what the storyboard looked like and kind of what the script looked like. And I didn't have time to teach them a whole lot of content, but if I could, you know, we'd talk about Freytag's pyramid, we talk about different shots and angles. And when it came time to shoot, I borrowed cameras from a colleague who had a bunch, and then we shot the film, but I edited it using the storyboard that they had made. And we were able to do a lot of language practice with this activity, and the students enjoyed the experience of making a film. And one of my students even said that it was one of her most special memories that she could keep with her was making this film. And so that was a really touching thing for me. I thought it's wonderful. And it wasn't like this forever though, because I think there was some hope, you know, and if you're determined and you find any way of doing it, people will recognize it. And it was maybe in my third year at Nanzan University, my department offered me a new elective course. It was kind of the first time to do it. And it was for this filmmaking project they wanted me to teach. And so I had a lot more freedom for this. And at this point in 2016 was a big change in the technology too. Mobile technology became much more ubiquitous, and almost all of them had smartphones at this point. So we could make this project a mobile project. The only downside was it was a huge class, and I had anywhere from 25 students to 46, which was crazy to manage. And so this required me to kind of upgrade the project a little bit and upgrade this framework based on some of these things. And so some of the key changes here in this framework was the introduction of project roles. This was really helpful because we just had so many students in this class, and even though the groups were bigger, I had about 5 or 6 students working in a group, so they really needed to have clear roles in this project. And then the tasks needed to be really well defined at each stage of the process. So we had development, pre-production, production, post-production, and distribution, but what they were doing at each of those stages and what the benchmark was, right? What they were supposed to do and what they were supposed to turn in. And at this point, self-management became a big part of this project too, because it was very difficult for me to manage 10 projects in terms of feedback and making sure everybody was doing what they were supposed to be doing. So they'd have to keep track and do checklists and write reports of what they did and reflections on at the end of each class. So this kind of became a big change in the way the project was approached back in 2016. And so the lesson out of this experience, I think, at this school was the importance of determination, right? If you want to do it, you know, and you're determined to, you'll find a way, and people will eventually recognize the value in it if you persevere, I think. And also, I think the flexibility, right, to adapt in order to successfully adapt that you're going to need with these kind of projects. Right. And so, again, another contract ended. So the end of Reloaded chapter 2, and a new chapter begins. And this time it's a little different. This time I entered almost the opposite. Instead of a lot of constrictions, I entered a world of choice, right? And I kind of felt like the architect. I had a lot of freedom and control over the curriculum and my course, and so did students. Right? The students had the ability to choose courses that they wanted. And it was a really fertile environment for growing this project and trying to kind of perfect this framework. And I might be running out of time, so I don't want to go into too much detail, but here at Nagoya City University, where I work now, I began to explore some of the other genres of filmmaking, like music video and documentary and narratives. And I would be really happy to chat with you about them more if you want to see kind of what those projects look like. We can chat after Discord, but I want to show you what the expanded framework looks like at this stage. All right, and here is probably one of the more recent presentations that I gave about this framework. Expanded stages. Okay, here we have still the same basic framework, but I've embraced these roles and expanded some of the tasks that we do. And there's more balance here. With the roles, we have a lot more that we can do in these projects. And at this time too, there's really big emphasis on distribution, or the last stage of this process. How are we not only, are we going to show our films at the end, but how are we going to publicize this film that we made, and what's the widest audience that we can reach with this film, and how are we going to really make an impact with what we've produced? And so things like, creating posters and, entering a film festival became a really important part of this project here. Okay, all right. So at the end of 2019, start of 2020, students were producing really amazing films, but you can never really anticipate when it all comes crashing down, right? At the start of COVID, I kind of felt like this project got crucified in a way. How am I going to have my students do this project that's, heavy group work? And how are we going to do filmmaking online? I was lost at the beginning. At first we were going to be on demand, and I thought, well, maybe we could do individual projects, but then we got Zoom and we got Microsoft Teams, and so this project became more of a reality. And some of the digital tools that I found really useful for remote filmmaking, some of them you're probably already familiar with, like YouTube, Zoom, right? But our school, we have Microsoft Teams, which is kind of like Google Classroom in a lot of ways, or like your learning management systems. And this really opened up the gates for communication, both synchronously and asynchronously as well. And then the class notebook, which is kind of like Google Docs. You can share files or documents between users. This was really great because we could create portfolios, and I could have groups working on documents collaboratively, like a collaborative digital storyboard, or working on the digital versions of the scripts at the same time. And they had a place where they could keep them all. And then Microsoft Forms for lessons and surveys and things like that. And then Flipgrid, which is for video sharing and creating, was wonderful. And then I discovered also Wevideo, which is a wonderful online editing tool. You can also have class subscription, which will allow your students to edit the same film collaboratively from different locations. So that was an amazing tool and discovery from this experience of COVID. The salvation of all of this, kind of, the original framework in a way, kind of breaking down, but in a way being reconstructed and reborn through this experience. And I think it's something, there's a lot of good things to come out of it, because when, you know, kind of like in the Matrix, when the humans and the technology finally have to work together for a common goal, right, they can, and beautiful things can happen, and they live in peace together. And so probably two of the main things that came out of this experience was, first of all, the students' digital skills. Right? Not only have they become comfortable with technology, but they're more flexible working online or offline. And now that we're back and forth on a whim, this is really important. And then their communication and collaboration skills outside of the classroom are so amazing now. And then the second thing out of this experience, I think, was this kind of rebirth of the filmmaking framework that I had been working on. And, you know, I'm, for the sake of this presentation, I'm calling it the Moderna framework, the Moderna framework. Kind of, when this project went online, it became so much less linear, right, and much more organic. I didn't know exactly what we'd be able to do. So, you know, we'd start with something like a self-introduction project, and then we'd go through the process once for that. And then we do a little bit more. We did a thematic montage, and we went through the process and talked a little bit more about storyboarding and cinematography. And then we went through and did this cinematic essay, right? And little by little, we're kind of building and repeating this process, and it's kind of getting ingrained. So by the time they get to the short film at the end, they're able to do it themselves at this point. And so I think this framework is now being utilized in a much more cyclical and repetitive process. All right. Okay. All right. So back to our home, and it brings us to now and in the future. And I just wanted to kind of finish with some lessons that I've kind of learned looking back over this experience. And there's kind of 4 directions I want to head toward the resurrections part. And the first thing I think about when I'm looking toward the future of this project and what I've learned from the past is about this kind of framework, right? This framework of development, pre-production, production, post-production, and distribution is really important. It's almost absolutely necessary if you're going to be doing any kind of filmmaking project. And it's useful because it's helpful it's flexible and adaptable to almost any kind of project you want to use. And it's really good for teachers who are just starting out and planning these kind of projects. And it's also really good for students to see the structure and the goals of this project. But one of the wonderful things about this project is it can be replicable and emergent, right? You can use it and you don't know where it's going to go, and you can repeat it. And I think for the future, we have to, as teachers, we should be moving towards not only, you know, guiding our students from the beginning to the end of a project, but moving towards training them to be able to use this framework on their own autonomously if they ever have to make a video in the future, or to go out into the world and they have to produce a film for their companies, right? And these skills are really important for them to have. And the best way of learning that is to repeat this process several times. And the second thing I've thought a lot about is this idea of codependence with technology, right? This project's really dependent on the technology. And as the technology is becoming easier to use, back to when it was back in 2010, there's been more time to focus on those 4 C skills like creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. We have a lot more time to spend on these and less on training with which tools and how to use these tools, because they're so much more easier to use and so much more common. Right? But the thing with technology is that it's always changing, and there's always going to be new updates and a new app and new equipment. And so it's always going to continue to change. And I think one of the lessons we have to instill in our students is this mindset to be able to experiment and explore and to work with those changes and not against them, especially when it comes to the technology. And then third, the students and how they're becoming much more autonomous, and we have to lead them to become more autonomous in these kind of projects. They've changed dramatically since 10 years ago in my own experience. And now I feel they're interested and they're more willing to collaborate in any environment, not just in the classroom, but outside as well and online.
5 minutes.
Yes, thank you so much. And then, and the students have become much more powerful resources now in the class. Right? They have their own set of knowledge and skills and experience. Last semester, I had students who were creating their own music for these films, and I had, and I don't know how to do that, but they do, and they help each other with these as well, and they teach me some new applications as well. And I always ask them, have you ever made a movie before on the first day of class? And in my experience, they always say no. But in the last year that I've been doing these projects, for the first time ever, I have students who say, yes, you know, I made a film with my friend, or I helped my brother for his class projects, or, you know, I've done some videos for Instagram and things like this, or for my parents' anniversary, something like that. And they've used and experimented with some of these editing applications. And that has not happened very often in my experience before. So the students are more self-directed too, I think. And for me, that means that I don't have to hold their hand as much anymore to get them to the end of this project, but instead I have to help them be able to master these skills and get them to be able to carry out this kind of filmmaking project on their own, and helping them identify those weaknesses and giving them the experience of repeating this and getting better at it. All right. And then finally, the idea of new environments. I think this is crucial because the walls of our classrooms are disappearing or have almost completely disappeared, I think. Now we can collaborate on filmmaking projects despite our location, and I never thought that was possible before last year even. And I think it also has great ramifications because the distribution of our work, when we make a film, now we can distribute it to global audiences, much wider audiences. And it gives us the chance to make a real impact in the world, and we can tackle real issues. And I think it's exciting because we're witnessing the birth of these new genres of film and new purposes for filmmaking. Right? Filmmaking for language learning was not the reason to make a film in the past, but it is now. And we've created these kind of communities like KOTESOL has done with this conference to bring teachers and students together who are working on these projects. And I think we need to do and connect even more than ever before with these kind of film festivals and events with language teachers and students. So I'm really excited for this rebirth and reincarnation after COVID and over time, and to kind of see what the future has in store. You know, this filmmaking project, I know it's only my personal story right now, but you know, this project and the students and myself, you know, and I think all of us, we are not where we were in the beginning. You know, we all start out as neophytes, and through doses of reality and our experiences, and we find that our ability to adapt and battle forces out of our control are really important and essential to be able to grow and develop toward this better future. So in a way, we're all like Neo and we're all the one. And thank you for listening to my story today. And I hope I'd love to also hear your stories too and your experiences with filmmaking. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ashley, for presenting. Everyone, let's round of applause for Ashley. Thank you so much. Yeah, if there's any question, I don't know if there's time. Ria, is
Yes,
there?
please. I tried to.
It's until 45 or 50. It's 45, right?
It's really fine.
It's okay.
Yeah, we can manage a few extra minutes. It's okay.
Oh yeah. So if there's any questions, you could put on the chat or you could unmute yourself.
Yeah, it was very interesting that it got more organic when everything went online. Yeah, I think it's kind of the problem of sorry to go back to another Matrix reference, but the problem that the architect had too, you know, like he was thinking so much about how to make this project perfect, you know, that he couldn't see beyond, or he couldn't see into the future. And maybe that's kind of where I was. And so when COVID happened, I kind of had to abandon that and just kind of see what emerged. And that's kind of how it emerged. Yeah, it was really interesting. Did you ever run your own film festival? Yes, I started a student film festival as part of the JALT Performance and Education SIG as a way to connect teachers and students as well. So yeah, we've done it twice so far. We've had a student film festival. So please, yes, if you're making films with your students, I really hope that you'll enter anywhere, from anywhere in the world. We'd love to have film contributions. How many film projects do you typically do per class or per semester overall? Let's see. Right now I'm doing two classes, and within each class I've got about anywhere from 6 to 10 projects going on, film projects going on at a time. And then within one class, within one semester, we do about 4 projects, 4 small filmmaking projects right now. We start off with the self-introduction, we do a thematic montage, we do the cinematic essay, and then the narrative short film. And a lot of the films that you see in the festival, and student-made films, were made last semester by my students. Some of them were a little shy to enter an international film festival, but about half of them entered into this festival. And those films were created on mostly, they did all of the planning online, and then they did all of the shooting at the end of the semester when we came back to campus. Yes, so that was the narrative short film. 6 to 10, did you mean 6 to 10 different groups? Yes, they're working in, I have about 5 groups working in each class, and I have 2 classes. Sorry, it's kind of hard to get all of the details in. I end up forgetting a lot of those really important things. So thank you for that really important question.
No, I have one question. As you were having the students make this film, did everyone have to speak? Did you have was that a criteria that, because I'm really interested in the language component and how they could develop productive skills.
Right. Yeah, and you know, it depends on their role, because there are a lot of students who don't want to be in front of the camera and don't want to be in front of the film, but they work much better when it comes to screenwriting and being a writer for this project. And so I try to balance those roles between them. So they're not always required to speak in the film itself, right? But the language that they produce, they're focusing on each part of the process. And we do things like script read-throughs. and focusing on not only the spoken communication, but nonverbal communication as well. And so those discussions that happen all take place in English.
Thank you. And yes, just like Anika posted, you could see some of her films, your students' films, yes, actually, on the
Yeah, some of them here. They worked really hard. And they spent about five weeks at the end of the course to create those films and to share with you today. What else was I thinking? Oh, and you know, when you watch the films too, one of the things that's really hard as a teacher is, you know, you see the final product, but you don't know the process, right? You don't see that process that went into it. And that's really the most important part. And so really the best way to know kind of what language students are using and what language they're learning, it all happens during that process. So you really need to observe that and focus on that rather than just the final product only. So thank you so much for listening.
Actually, thank you so much for insightful presentations and another round of applause. And we'll be looking forward to watching your students, end result work, I think.
Thank you so much.
Nice to see.
And thank you very much. Neo, we have our own Neo today.
Yes. All right. Yes, thank you,
Did
everyone.
everybody catch this Easter egg? I tried to make it as obvious as possible, but
it was a 7, yes? Inside Out.
yes.
If anyone missed it, I'll post it up again on the chat right here. Just know. Okay. Yeah, it's on the chat. So if you missed it, you could refer to there. All right, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, our own Neo, for being a host to this session. You did a lot of work today, and now is your chance to relax. So I'm going to switch over the hostship. If you don't mind passing host to Reese Randall, will be the next host.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
So you guys are welcome to hang out in this room. If you wish to catch the next session that is coming up at 3 o'clock. Over to you, Reese.
Yes. Hello.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Yes, bye-bye.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.